Hello, welcome. This is Always Acting Up. My name is Caslin, and this is the podcast where I'm going to be sharing all of my personal stories and journeys as an actress in the entertainment industry. So this is actually going to be part 2 of the Hoo Dancin Blues with Laurie Huff, where we kind of talked about the quarantine, our feelings, going back home, online dance classes, and much, much more. So if you are just now tuning in, stop, make sure to go back, check out part 1, finish that, and then come back and you'll be able to catch up exactly where we are. But before we get into part 2, I do want to give a shout out to you guys who have joined me on Instagram, on my podcast apps, who have subscribed, made comments. And of course, I do want to give a shout out to my producer, Hisonni Johnson. And now back to part 2. I have another question. For these dance classes, I'm just curious, are they still charging like full class rates or is it more at like a discounted price?
The ones that I've been doing and that I've seen are at like discounted prices. If not completely for free, like actually there are quite a few like teachers and choreographers that, especially initially, were just doing it for free.
That's super nice.
Which is like super nice. But of course, I mean, like you cannot do that for free forever.
Yeah.
You need to be compensated like for your time and for your effort. So I completely understand like them starting to charge for it.
Yeah,
And I agree with it, which is why I still go ahead and like pay for it.
I totally understand that. As an artist, you want to support other artists. God, I can't even talk. You want to support other artists because at some point, like, you got to get paid. Yeah, I mean, it is your art and it is your time, but you got to get your money and that's your job as well. What I have seen in some of the workshops, and I'm not saying all of them because I've definitely seen the same thing for the acting community. There's been so many free chats and workshops, and those are just so generous. They don't even have to do that. That's just being generous and being helpful. And then I've seen plenty of classes at full price. I'm sorry, half price. But I've also seen some workshops at, I think it's full price. And I feel a little upset by that because it feels like a money grab. And I feel like this is not the time to be money grabbing, especially when most of us artists and actors and dancers, we're like the poorest people on the planet. Like we barely work, and I work and do trade shows too, so I haven't actually had a job since mid-March, and I don't know what the future's going to be and if I'm going to have another one. So any income I do have now needs to really be saved and put in the used specifically and put in like the right places. You know what I'm saying? So like some of these I'm seeing are like $200 for like a 3-hour event. And I don't know, like maybe in person, okay, fine. But in a Zoom or whatever, how do I know you're actually paying attention to me? It feels a little, I guess you could see I'm a little frustrated by that. It bothers me. I don't like it.
Totally. Like, yeah, I can totally see that. And like, I guess like I have not come across that yet that I've noticed. But if I were, like, those would be, like, the ones that, like, I would opt out of because, like, I'm just like you. Like, like, all my work has been canceled since the beginning of March. So, like, I don't know, like, exactly, like, when I'm going to get, like, paying gigs again. So I'm the same way. It's, like, I am considering myself on an extremely tight budget. And any unnecessary expenses, like, I'm not paying for. I'm trying to like keep like all of my expenses like down as much as possible, and try to stretch like every dollar as far as it can go.
Yeah. But on the flip side of all this, it's also really great because being in Vegas now as opposed to LA, these classes being online are giving me an opportunity to do them straight in my bedroom as opposed to having to drive back and forth to LA. And not only myself, but like I did a class a couple weeks ago, and we had actors from Canada, Puerto Rico, London, and we're all in one class. So at the same time, it's great because it's giving us all access to classes and opportunities that we wouldn't have had before. So really,
Yeah,
really great.
totally agree.
But when you're price gouging, is that the word? Not okay. I just can't get on board with that. Do you think that at the end of all of this, when society opens up and it's all safe, do you think there will be any good that comes out of this?
Are you talking specifically about like the entertainment and dance world, or like kind of like in general?
Um, I think in general, and then I'll ask you about the dance world.
Okay. So in general, one of the big things that I'm hoping that people will kind of like learn from this experience, or at least specifically like companies, what I hope that companies will learn is that the companies that like were able to work remotely and like transfer their work to like their employees being able to like work remotely from home
hmm
will continue to maintain that
I
most of the time,
I thought about that. Yeah.
or at least like be open to it. Because I think that it really helps to obviously reduce traffic and commutes, and it increases the employees' like time at home, like with their family and their pets. So to me, like that is actually a really positive thing
hmm
that they've been able to do, like with that this lockdown has kind of like forced us to do. So I really hope that companies um, are open to continuing that in the future.
That's actually good that you reminded me because I forgot about that as well. But I was definitely thinking about that when all this was happening. If all these companies can do it now, they guess they could have done it before. They just didn't really want to. But I agree. I think it would be really great to allow maybe part time or a couple of days of week some of the people that can do their work from home do it from home because then it gives them an opportunity to spend more time with their family and less pollution in the air and commute time, and I think overall a lot less stress.
In like my own work, like in my own experiences, like I've also been like as an event producer and kind of like field market managing and things of that nature. And a lot of that work is strictly through like internet and email and like phone calls. And like I've always found that I've actually been more productive when I stay at home because I don't have as many distractions. I'm happier.
Hmm. Hmm. Did you notice before you went back home to Kentucky? Could you actually see the difference in the air pollution and quality in LA? Because I've seen pictures, but I don't know. Like I Photoshop all the time. I don't know what was real or if you could actually see the difference.
It's like one of those things that, like, when you're inside the city and like inside the smog,
Mm,
I feel like you don't actually really notice it that much
that's
either.
true.
Like, you don't notice it until like you get outside of the city and are looking at the city skyline.
Hmm.
Then you'll notice the smog. So like I didn't notice like that big of a difference just because like I was still inside the city itself.
So we talked about if there will be any good that comes from this, like with the general, in general. What do you think about if anything will come from the dance world? Do you think there's going to be, obviously, there will be big changes, but do you think for the good, we've kind of learned a couple things maybe?
I think so. I mean, and actually, like this comment, like probably, it can apply more to general as well as like the entertainment. But like one thing that um is very common, like in entertainment, is that we are gig workers, and like part time and everything else. So we don't have like paid sick leave.
Yes.
So a
Hmm.
lot of times, like we end up like having to still go to work even like when we're sick, because otherwise like we lose out on that money.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like if we don't show up for the work, then for the gig, then like you don't get the money and you get
Hmm.
replaced. So and there are actually a lot of jobs out there like that as well, like where people will still go to work like even though like they're sick, even though they feel bad, and because like they can't afford not to, and because the companies um, like will actually threaten them that they'll be fired, they won't have a job if they don't come.
Yeah.
So I hope that this will. I actually kind of like hope that like it'll turn into a mandatory, like 2 to 3 week like paid sick leave for like
You
any and
know,
every job.
I love that you said that because I didn't even think about it because You're exactly right. If I'm sick, I have to go to work no matter what. And the fear of calling in to say I'm sick is terrifying because most of the time they're not going to believe you. And if you say no one time, guess what? It's done. They're never calling you back. Like, opportunity game over. So maybe, yeah, maybe they'll be a little bit more lenient and actually believe us a little bit more when we are sick, because the last thing you want is to spread your germs to everybody else and then you have everybody sick and then we start this whole thing all over again. I agree. So, you were telling us that you were editing your web series. Do you want to tell us about that?
Of course. I always love a shameless plug.
We all do.
So, so my web series is called Bitter Party of One.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a sketch comedy web series that is all kind of like based around and being able to like laugh about the experience of being divorced. In particular, like I've been divorced, so like it's coming from that, but obviously it's
Mm-hmm.
something that's also like very relatable. And so it's just, yeah, like being able to like vlog and laugh in like sketch comedy form about the experiences and the stereotypes involved, like with being married and going through a divorce, and then like obviously like, being like reintroduced to like the single and like dating world as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's called Bitter Party of One, and it is on YouTube. And yeah, what else would you like to know about it?
So it's called Bitter Party of One. Is that if I type that in, or do you have a web channel? Like, how can we find it?
Yeah, if you type it in, like that's the channel. It's like Bitter Party of One. It's like the number one as opposed to like the word.
Okay,
And so Bitter Party of the number one.
got
And
it.
especially if you do Bitter Party of One web series, then it should come up with it, no problem.
Are you working on any other projects on top of the web series? Like, as any short films, features, anything else in the works? Or you never know.
Yes, but like very beginning stages. Like I've been kind of just like focusing like on writing,
Mm-hmm.
additional like ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what shape they really turn out to be. Like I'm thinking it's more going to be like film shorts or like maybe even like feature film. Like
Yay! It's always good to like keep your productivity going and get your juices flowing. And sometimes, like, all those ideas, like, you just have so many, you just gotta like write it down. And I'm excited. And I'm gonna make sure I post a little link in the comments below so you guys can make sure to check out the web series on YouTube. And so, Laurie, we know that we can find the web series on YouTube. How can we get a hold of you and follow along with you? You got the Instagram. Where can we see you?
yes. So yeah, Instagram is definitely going to be probably the best way to be able to follow along with me in like my career path, like in all forms, as well as feel free to always like reach out to me. And it is the Laurie Huff, so the THE and then Laurie LAURIE Huff HUFF.
Woo woo! Yeah. So we are at my favorite part of the podcast. This is the moment of positivity. Oh no, wait, I messed up. Hang on, I messed up. Wait, I gotta do it again. And now we are at my favorite part of the podcast. This is going to be the moment of positivity. I like the little pop at the end. That's my favorite.
I love the sound effects there.
Yes. So at the end of every podcast, I usually like to end it with a quote or some positivity that I have come up with to make myself feel better. And I'm going to give the honors to you. So if you'd like to share something that kind of makes you feel better, a quote, whatever would be, I would be honored.
Awesome. I'm happy to do it as well because I do try to like look for the silver linings in things.
Mm-hmm.
And I did actually find well I have a quote. I actually don't know who originally said it. This is something that I discovered through social media, but it didn't have like an author, so I can't give credit where credit is due, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But here it goes. If you rearrange the letters in depression, you get I pressed on. Your current situation is
Oh,
not your final destination.
I loved it. That's, who comes up with all this stuff? Like, it's super clever. Like, I would look at the word depression and be like, yeah, I'm depressed. I know exactly how that feels. But there's some like smart, forward thinking individual out there who was like, no, I pressed on. I love that one. Do you have to,
Yeah.
is that one that you tell yourself often? Because I have like certain quotes that I have to like remind myself all the time. And then there's other ones that like just pop up and I'm like, oh, that's great.
Yes, yes, definitely. Like it's because I mean, yeah, like I definitely go through time periods like where like I'm feeling down and like frustrated and like definitely like depressed and like something that um like even though like I'm going through those time periods, like I have to remind myself this will pass, like it'll get better. And so yeah, this was kind of like a quote that just helps to remind myself of that. It's like just because you're feeling depressed, it doesn't mean it's it's not your final destination. Like your current situation is not your final destination.
Yeah, and that's a really good one, especially now during this time period where we're going on like 2 months and we feel like this is the end of the world. And it definitely feels that way. But by this time next year, we're gonna all have pressed on, moved on, and hopefully this will be in the past and we never, ever, ever have to go through this ever again. So that was a really good quote. I like that one. Yay. So is there any other things you'd like to throw out, chat about before we finish up and wrap up this podcasty?
I did actually think of like one other thing that kind of goes back to the whole I hope of good things coming out of this, or like what have we learned?
Mm-hmm.
In particular, like kind of like about like entertainment is that um, something that I kind of had to like realize and remind myself of is that sports have been canceled during
Oh
this.
my God, the Olympics, I know.
Of course, as horrible as that is, and I feel bad for the entire industry. But obviously, again, like those are things that like probably won't be coming back soon, and like we have managed to live through lockdown like without them.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some hardcore like sports fans like out there, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was like something that I thought about was the fact that like a lot of times I feel like sports and entertainment, or like the arts in general, like especially like in like schools and things of that nature, have to compete for like funding, and there's
You're
like
right.
so much money that gets like invested into sports.
Mm.
Um, but with this lockdown and sports being canceled, um, the demand for the arts has increased. And I just hope that people kind of like really appreciate and realize and support the arts more because of that. Like the arts are the only things like that has kept us going and entertained during this situation.
That is so true. And I'm really glad you said that because what would we all be doing if there wasn't Netflix or music? I mean, really, like I don't know what we would all be doing if this happened in 1995 cuz
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's us, it's artists and I really do hope and agree that I maybe people will appreciate the arts a little bit more and stop cutting the arts from schools, you guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I agree, and hopefully, this makes a little bit of an impact. And I guess we don't really know what the future will hold, but as long as we stay positive and keep pressing on, we should all get through this together.
Perfect way to summarize.
Yay! Well, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast, you guys out there listening. Make sure to go check out Bitter Party of One on YouTube, as well as follow the Laurie Huff on Instagram, myself, Caslin Rose on Instagram, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share it with all your friends. And you guys, thanks for joining. I will catch you on the next one. Okay. Yay!
Yay! Okay, I was like, do I hang up? No, I'll
No,
stay on the line.
I just wanted to make sure I had the music in there and just so we can edit and fix things. And thank you for joining me on my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Like, it's actually kind of fun. I like it.
It is, like, once you get in the flow of it and, like, obviously, this is my second one, so I'm still learning and I'm mumble jumbling, and I'm hoping that by, like, episode 100, I should at least have this down, but it's fun, especially right now during social distancing where we're really there's Zooms and stuff like that, we don't get to chat as much with everybody. It's kinda nice just to take what we can get and have little conversations, and I actually think I've heard from some people that they are catching up more than they would have before. So, we're always so
Like with
busy.
friends. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we're so busy, you just don't get to call people back. And now you guys don't have an excuse not to call me back. So when you don't call me back, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, okay, we gonna fight. All right, that was my good friend Lori. Make sure to follow and check out her web series. You guys stay safe and yeah, keep yourself busy and positive. And if you don't feel like doing anything, that's okay. If you want to do a whole bunch of stuff, that's okay too. Just got to stay healthy.